Let us welcome our distinguished panelists who will speak on the topic of changing contours of legal education, keeping pace with current needs. Our moderator for this talk will be Michael Dubin, who is a customer success manager and trainer at Bulletin Media, and he will be joined by panelist Robert Crosbie, who is a legal billing analyst at Berkshire Hathaway, Homestate Companies. We have Samuel J. Vincent, Development Counsel and Chief U.S. Legal at ex-Elio Renewables Group, and Christopher Zampogna, owner of Zampogna PC. Let's put our hands together for our panelists. Thank you, gentlemen.
Wonderful 3-day conference. We thank you for sticking around towards the near end of the conference, and we hopefully will be able to provide you with some context and maybe a few takeaways to continue to grow in your areas of expertise. So I just want to kind of kick things off and say, for those of you that recall or remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Ferris Bueller quipped by saying, "Life moves pretty fast." Imagine what he would say now. The pace of change is accelerating at warp speed, buoyed by technology advances, communication, and globalization. I'm here alongside two esteemed colleagues, and I would like both of them just to share with you all a little bit about who they are, and more importantly, why they do what they do every day. Floor is yours, gentlemen.
Good afternoon to one and all. My name is Robert Crosbie. I did my undergraduate law degree in the UK, and I currently work as a legal billing analyst within the legal claims department of a carrier of workers' compensation insurance. Our office is located in San Francisco. I do what I do because actually I do love auditing work. It's a balancing exercise whereby I'm weighing up the pros and cons, the consequences, the potential negative results if you make a mistake against my employer's litigation guidelines, ensuring that firms are billing reasonably, as well as their charges are legitimate. And my interest in this topic of legal education is based on my natural passion for law as an academic discipline. Law as a doctrinal subject is an inexact science, and the law student, and indeed the practitioner, is tasked with the challenge of trying to articulate something very abstract and no boundaries within its scope in a manner that is coherent so as to produce this very logical thesis. So, and then be able to explain it to a client, to an examiner, to whoever. I love being part of that process, and I'm very excited to discuss this topic with my two learned co-panelists, as well as with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Chris Zampogna. You heard a little bit about me when I had that little award ceremony. I was a past bar president in Washington, D.C. I actually do educate at Georgetown University, recently released incarcerated individuals in a prison initiative. And paralegal studies. So I have direct, I would call it formal education concepts, but then I have my own law office where I primarily practice in federal court and litigation. And the passion, I always strive for justice and things. I know that's, it's kind of extremely, as we heard in our first lecture this afternoon, it's difficult to quantify, but I think it isn't too. I mean, it is and it isn't. So it's not a numbers thing, though, for sure. So that's what drives me all the time, and injustices invariably, well, I mean, I don't want to say they make me depressed, but they do, and I get frustrated when things aren't right. So that's what keeps me going. I've been a lawyer for 30 years, still kicking, as they say. So I hope I can impart, on the discussion today, my 3 decades now of experience. I'm not that old, actually, but I mean, I graduated in my 20s. I'll just say that. So fairly old. But I look forward to hopefully some interaction as well. I know there's been a lot of real estate discussions too, so hopefully we can bring in even some of that today. Thanks.
Well, thank you, both of you guys. I need a mic, but you know, a little bit just quickly to kind of sum up my background and really more importantly, my passion. My daytime job, I am a customer success trainer, training lawyers and in-house legal teams on a proprietary online database that business I work for has. It is primarily legal information research, scoping out judges, other attorneys in the niche market of litigation in Illinois. So my daytime, I do a variety of different continuing legal education programs, webinars, online or in-person training. At nighttime, I actually am currently pursuing a legal education, a paralegal certificate, a dual certificate in both corporate and litigation. But really, my passion lies in accessibility to services, accessibility to lawyers, and the ability to have affordable education. I have some personal experiences. I also have a diagnosable learning disability, chronic depression, anxiety, and I've always found that, you know, you got to be your own advocate, especially in the education arena. If I wasn't my own advocate, if somebody told me, you know, no, you can't do something, I said, to heck with that. Yes, I can. I can do it because I'm able to do it. I don't let anything hold me back from my true passion. So that is just a little bit about who I am and a little bit about what I do. So I just kind of want to hear from the both of you in terms of, you know, how are you both keeping pace with the evolving, constant changes, not only in, you know, the realm of legal education, but in technology. Technology is changing our lives. How are you both keeping up to date and current with that?
Yeah, and I mean, there's two parts for me since I'm doing formal education and own my own law office and I'll start with that. In the practice of law, I try to engage in as much. I don't have a large office, so I've always leveraged technology to help me compete against larger law firms, and it's always been a game changer. So I would say, you know, lawyers, you may or may not know this as a group, are not the first to adopt technology. I mean, they're usually many times the last, because my first job I was using a typewriter, and that wasn't that long ago. So, because the senior partner made us use typewriters and dictate, so that's pretty much gone, you know, as a process. But so I didn't do that. I did not take that away from that first experience. So I try to stay on top of new technologies. You know, luckily I had a good education, so I think all of it dwells down to first your own, and that's why I like doing formal education, your actual thought process, because you can apply it to all these technologies when they come out. Your logic in using things, knowing how good is it. We're probably going to speak about, you know, a lawyer that used artificial intelligence to write a brief. That'll probably come up later. Didn't work out so well, you know, so made up cases basically. But the lawyer didn't check, which is not being a good lawyer. So, so yeah, the pace of that is, it's changing all the time, and it's always something that I think, you know, as lawyers lawyers are supposed to be on Facebook, for instance, you know, social media, to know, I don't know, I got on initially to find a client that didn't pay me, you know, that was my first, and then, and it worked, I found the client, so, but then all my relatives found me, and I became, you know, very many more likes or whatever on it, but that's something lawyers should adopt, because we need it even for picking juries. You can use it to get background information on people. You know, some of it's not allowed, but you can do some of it too. So all that has to be, I mean, if you're not doing it, you're not going to win. So you have to be involved in the technology aspect of things. You know, my worry is too much reliance on it. Like I said, that case that I mentioned. And students, when I teach the formal end of it, I try to teach them to think, so for instance, I don't let them use a computer in an exam. They must use a book, which I know some people think is antiquated, but books are still good. And sometimes you can gain more thought out of a book. So, for instance, code books have, in the beginning of each one, they usually have a table of contents. Sounds simple, but a table of contents, if you review it, can jog your mind for issues to spot, which is what lawyers do, is spot issues. So, I try to teach them to use a book, only a book in the exam, so they'll hopefully take out that thought, the way to think when they engage in, who knows, the different AI sources, et cetera. So yeah, it's a constantly changing landscape, and then interaction. It's still important to interact with people. As a lawyer, it's important to be in organizations. As I said, I was bar president for a while. That's helpful to establish trust with certain individuals. They know you're legitimate, and they learn more about you. So it's multifaceted. But yeah, it's a lot of things to do, and I enjoy it. So I think that helps me want to continue to do it, and hopefully that's imparted on people that are lawyers or in the legal profession.
From my perspective, the first experience I encountered where I really had to adapt to a new form of technology was during my first job in the US, which was as a document specialist, the court services vendor. Essentially, my responsibility was to file court documents on behalf of law firms. At the beginning of 2019, the Los Angeles Superior Court had completely altered its filing system from physical to electronic. The bulk of our customer base were primarily based in LA. A lot of pro pers and attorneys and paralegals who would file through our interfaced portal. The difficulty was that because the olden days, the legal assistant would walk into the clerk's office and just hand the court pleadings, and the clerk would just file for them on their behalf. Not much in the way of questions asked. But electronically, the database is very precise. There is no room for error. You cannot afford to make a mistake. The issue was simply that because the party names have to be listed as either individual or a corporation, specify who the defendants or plaintiffs are. And I do remember having a conversation with an attorney who was puzzled. On the court pleading, he was representing a defendant. On an answer to a complaint, I'm seeing, for example, Robert Crosbie doing business as Robert Crosbie Incorporated. But the online database does not have something similar. Is this person being sued as an individual or a corporation? Or is it two different parties? And the attorney was somewhat gobsmacked. I don't know. Okay, well, it's going to have to be one or the other. But it's not my job to now go into the legal process. That is for the law professionals to know. So basically, I'm educating indirectly these professionals on how to conduct their practice. But in doing so, it's just so that the documents could be filed. Because there was an upcoming statute of limitations, actually, I just took his word, fine. This is being sued as an individual and the corporation. But ideally, the court pleading should have both parties' names listed. Then upcoming my current position, I did have a concern regarding my role as an auditor. Will my work become so automated that my services will no longer be required? Berkshire Hathaway Homestate Companies, my employer, and thankfully Mr. Warren Buffett has really given it a very solid foundation in terms of capital, plenty of capital to deploy. It takes a very much more disciplined approach to legal billing and its operations. Our competitors, State Farm, Liberty Mutual, they have automated systems for legal billing. They don't have an analyst on the other end to monitor invoices that are submitted by their defense lawyers. But for me, our question is, will this be replaced at some point? And no, I have assurance actually, because Berkshire Hathaway really wants to ensure that their firms are really representing themselves as a client to the utmost professionalism. It will maintain a strict legal billing procedure. So fortunately, nope, we have not yet. been impacted by technology, but only time will tell.
Thank you. Thank you. And just real brief, my experience with technology probably goes back to grade school, when, taking a kind of a computer class, learning how to type on a keyboard. I think it's kind of a lost art, where, at one point, you were learning how to maybe write or do cursive, and, I know the generation that my daughter is going to be growing up in, that's all they know is technology. She's a 3.5-year-old, and she's taught me stuff on the iPad that I didn't even know how to do. So it's crazy that your mind just kind of goes to technology because it's around you. We're glued to our phones, constantly checking our emails as our profession. Our clients are emailing us. We have to feel like we have to get back to them right away at all times. And sometimes you just got to think, from a clarity, maybe even a mental health standpoint, just take a break, put down the technology, because I know it's hard to do, but I think it's important to do once in a while, just to kind of disconnect from technology. But in my job, my company was primarily a print service company. They do a lot of print publication, and back in I think it was 2017, they digitized everything. Because if they didn't digitize, people were just going on the internet. They were searching. So, I think that's important that, we saw that evolution to the digital world in my business, and now everything is on one portal, one self-service portal, and I'm the self-service customer care rep who takes all the frontline calls and where to go to find access to cases. How do you evaluate taking on a case? How is that judge ruling on certain cases? What is that a litigator's track record in the trial court level? I coach and I instruct them where to go, and so they can have an easier time. I'm constantly talking to paralegals, and I'm an aspiring paralegal in a program where technology is built in. It's a requirement course that I have to take. So I'm looking forward to see where that goes in the future. But again, you have to keep up. I think trends are keeping current and up to date on technology is crucial. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind, and it's possible that somebody, could potentially replace you. I don't think artificial intelligence will replace. However, they will make your life a little bit easier. So embrace it. Embrace technology. It's here to stay. So a couple other things I just kind of want to ask you both in terms of, kind of where you're seeing, kind of the formal education, and maybe, Chris, you can speak to this as a professor in terms of, do you see any areas of possible, a need to, coach, instruct the future leaders in the legal field, and kind of where do you see things going in the formal legal education in maybe the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, all right, thank you. So I guess I should, I don't know if you've been to lawyer lectures, but I probably should say I'm speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of the university. So, they always have that disclaimer. So I'll say that now. Yeah, so my particular program is somewhat unique, but I have taught students that aren't just released from being incarcerated, although there's some similarities. Just obviously experience in life is quite a bit different. But the changes have, I would say the biggest change probably that's affected it is how you incorporate the technology. Again, we keep speaking about that into your formal education, because you still need to know how to find a code if you have a problem. And I still believe you need to know how to find it mentally on your own, knowing where to go, rather than just, because using technology gives you a shortcut, in my opinion, in many cases. It'll find it, but it may not find, because law is multi-layered, it won't find the depth of what you might find if you're looking through things. So So I think it's harder to educate somewhat today because people are like, why don't I just type in the thing, type in the question, I'm getting the answer. Why do I even need to go to class? Why do I have to sit here and not use my computer? And you make me take a quiz every class, which I do sometimes now. But I find, that engages the students' brains more. So you're thinking because I think that's, as we keep automating things, people, don't put their own thought process into it, and it isn't simple typing in and getting an answer. So I think that's the challenge in formal education, is continuing to make the books relevant. I mean, they are, because, I asked a question earlier in the program. I mean, I'm certain AI makes mistakes too. I mean, someone said they don't. I'm like, I gotta believe. Well, we already know it has made mistakes with a legal process, but who's going to double check? And that's what the lawyer does, or the paralegal. They're going to double check. How do you double check? Well, you know how to think. You know how to ask the questions. So that's the challenge, I think, in a big sense, in educating it. And hopefully, the good thing in my case is I also practice, so I kind of know how it's implemented, so I can give a practical application to the teaching, which is also important. And I think that's lacking a lot in much of higher education in the legal aspect. They try to have clinics, but I know from my legal experience or law school experience, which I had a great experience, but I came out not knowing how to really do anything as a lawyer. I had to learn on the job, which is the second part, which I do a lot, today with students that I hire. But yeah, so hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you very much. Another question that I was, contemplating as I think we all were discussing and kind of working on this panel discussion for you all here is, and either one of you guys can kind of address, but, I think we hear that clients, not lawyers, are, in control, and there's so much pressure on lawyers to do more with less, or legal professionals to serve as clients, do more for them with less. And I would love to hear kind of your experience, and are you seeing that in your current roles?
Just for clarification, by less, do you mean less resources, less in the way of legal authority?
Yeah.
And really, there needs to be a major emphasis on how to address problems where you don't have legal authority. There is no rule, there is no principle, there's no guideline. What you have to work on. The formal legal arena is designed to prepare that law student to think critically by analyzing this vast amount of information without actually anything to aid that person's decision making. What do? All anyone can do in the interim period until the legislator enacts some law or until some judge provides some commentary in a significant case is to theorize what could potentially happen, but at the same time, maintain discipline. We must be rational and stick to what the law currently is. But how does law firms and practices deal with the current problem, this moment in time? It would be to keep the current law in the background, but do not tailor their advice in a manner that is, it needs to be subjectively in the client's best interests, of course. That's good customer service. But at the same time, keep the current law in the background so that the advice given will remain objective. Moreover, the firm just has to be able, or the legal professional would have to be able to essentially produce some logical thesis. Basically, the practicing lawyer is educating the client on what the law currently is. And because there is currently ambiguity, it was Paul Crisoulo who mentioned this in our panel discussion last Monday, there's very little in the way of law regarding artificial intelligence at the moment. As it happens, I believe the European Parliament is in the process of enacting this AI Act. What that would do is essentially provide more, it would make it mandatory for AI specialists to explain to make it mandatory to disclose where the data is coming from when manufacturing these AI systems. I would advise, legal professionals, just be careful on your data, where you're getting your information from. Yes, that's my response.
Yeah, I guess I take it, your question too, about the client that wants things done the least possible costs too, I think, and how that impacts. And that's always the battle. You know, I have cases that I really like, but the client even can't afford to pay the basic minimums. But, you know, sometimes you keep it anyways to try to keep your passion for law open, and that's a different story, but that could be because of just resources itself. The more frustrating ones are the ones that have the money but don't want to pay you the money. So, you know, I think there was a lawyer earlier that spoke about a flat fee. I suppose that could work. But you have to show, you have to impact on your client that you are valuable to them. I mean, so how do you do that? You know, communication is very important. If you have a large practice, you know, you have more than 40, 50, 100 cases that you're managing yourself, you should still try to contact all the clients weekly or every bi-weekly maybe if you can, so they're not just sitting out there. And that means, as this whole program has talked about, you care. It's showing you care about them, and then they will pay you. I mean, that's kind of, so that's that kind of eventually creates that situation. But you know, the technology, you can do things less expensively too as time passes, so that does help the client. And then finally, things that we can't learn through this artificial intelligence discussion we keep having is, you know, the client as a person. I mean, you get to know them, which is not something you can quantify. So you kind of know their price point difficulties or whatever you want to call it. So you can know kind of how to charge, if that's such a thing, and know if they're going to be you know, not happy with certain things. So, but communication is very important in all of that. So, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you. You know, and just kind of my experiences, and it's been really interesting from an educational standpoint. I enrolled in a paralegal studies program really in the middle of COVID. The program, the formal education program, was primarily, you know, an in-person up until, you know, the pandemic, and everything pretty much overnight transitioned to online. And I think, you know, we're seeing more of that online component, not only in formal education, but in court proceedings. I know in the Chicagoland, Cook County court systems, which I'm heavily involved with as a legal services provider, you know, they were doing a lot of their stuff over Zoom. And now that we're kind of transitioning maybe a little bit out of the heightened part of COVID, what are the future plans to utilize, you know, technology? You know, they're talking about, you know, bringing, you know, a lot of lawyers back for, you know, maybe 2 to 3 days in the office, where, you know, for a good portion of the last handful, you know, few years, it was strictly, you know, working from home and being able to provide the necessary means of technology so you can still do your job while you're working from home. So I think the access to technology is crucial. You know, there's a couple things that I found, and then we definitely want to open it up to the audience for questions, but, you know, kind of in my research, as I'm always looking for what's the latest programs and services that are incorporating technology. I know there's a few programs out there that have been exploring kind of experiential learning. There's a program out of Miami Law School where they're actually setting up an online environment where those that attend that school can work on creating innovations at the intersection of law, business, and technology. I know another program out of Northwestern University that's focused on the STEM program, where they incorporate, you know, it's a master's program where there's, you know, incorporating business and communication and the law. And that's just a few programs to name to two. I'm sure Chris has plenty that he knows about. Probably have plenty to know about as well, Robert, but just to name a few programs. And I just kind of want to round things off just with kind of what does, because both, I know we were chatting, you were involved with, real estate. You may be involved a little bit with possible real estate, but what does kind of real estate law look to you, maybe as an attorney? We know that there's states that require attorneys to be part of that transactional business, and there's other states that do not require it. But if you can kind of fill in the audience on that.
Yeah, and quickly, I'm licensed in New York, D.C., and Maryland. In New York State, at real estate closings, we call them closings there, or they still do that, I think. You have to have a lawyer present to actually complete the transaction. So invariably, it takes like twice as long there than in any other state, just so in case you're buying a house in New York, it takes a long time. But the flip side is you have a very good analysis when you're signing the documents, as opposed to, say, where you're doing everything online maybe now for a closing, and the lawyer is not even, they're at the bank or whatever. They looked at the documents, but that's it. But so I guess this little diverts from the question. One thing about education I think that's important too is knowing the client. And what I've found today, and it would relate to real estate transactions too, though, is technology is great, but it can also remove people from interacting with people. So I find when I hire people, I usually engage, because today some of the younger generation doesn't have as much interaction. So I find people that work in hospitality industry to be great to come in as lawyers, because they learn, whether it's in a real estate transaction or whatever, how to trust, how to gauge people, because they're engaged. That could be if they're a bartender or something of that nature. So I guess I would add that into my little bit of analysis in addition to the general topic there of real estate. But go ahead. I know we don't have a lot of time.
No, thank you. I would like to kind of open it up to the audience, see if you guys have any questions that we can, look to address this afternoon. All right, well, just to kind of recap. Oh.
And you can always ask us after,
Yes.
too, if you get a question.
Do you find that there is a difference between education needed in the real estate arena versus in the regular law practice?
Are you talking, you mean being a real estate agent as opposed to
No, as an
processing?
attorney, are there differences that you feel that you see in when you're taking education classes or giving education classes in real estate versus other areas of law? Is there a difference, or is it just another area of law?
Yeah, well, it is another, but real estate's very subjective to the state. So as all the real estate agents or real estate people, I'm sure, that are here know that. So legally, it's very state specific. So you have to really be up on your real estate law. It's not like you can blanket cover a whole bunch of places, because where I practice in D.C. and Maryland, I'm not licensed in Virginia, but you can cross over just a few miles and have a completely different way that you can approach a real estate issue. So it's very labor intensive to know that. So you have to, well, if you're teaching someone, you got to really impart on that associate or whomever, or if it's a client, that it did take 5 hours to research whatever legal issue was about specifically some real estate matter, because that is how legally poignant real estate law is. So so hopefully that helps.
So just to kind of a recap, I think you all can see that all three of us have different backgrounds and experiences, but we all are passionate about education, whether it be formal education, on the job education. We believe that it's important to continue to grow, to continue to educate yourself, and more importantly, just to continue to keep up to date and current on the landscape of the legal profession. It's ever changing, and those who seize the opportunity will indeed position themselves at the forefront of a more innovative and client-centric legal profession. You know, we believe that the emergence of new technology do present new opportunities for jobs that are not here today, but will be developed in the near future. Lawyers who are willing to adapt to new tech and learn those new skills will remain relevant and effective in the future. Myself, as a student of legal studies, a lifelong learner, I am excited to be part of this ever-evolving profession. And I think we all look forward to seeing how it continues to evolve in the years to come. Thank you.